myofascial release class for your IT band. Now, what's interesting about the IT band, and if you're not familiar with that structure, most of us are though, it's this thickened connective tissue that runs from the hip down to the outer knee. And what's interesting about the IT band is that we tend to think of it as kind of a separate chunk of this fascial connective tissue that, again, runs between those 2 points, hip to knee. But really, it's a thickened part of a bigger casing that wraps around the quads, the adductors, the hamstrings, and up into the glutes as well. So if you are suffering from pain or tension or discomfort in the IT band or in any of those other areas that I mentioned, they're all related. They all literally are the same network. And the IT band is really just a thickened strap of that fascial grouping. And what that thickened strap does is it creates a nice sense of stability for the knee and the pelvis. And many people think that or feel the urge to want to kind of smush and roll and press into the IT band. And what can really be more helpful is to address all of the separate pieces that are creating the whole structure and to look more at the hydration specifically of the IT band itself, because we really want a taut, strong IT band because it is a stabilizing structure. So, in this class today, we'll look at rolling out the glutes, the hamstrings, the adductors, a little bit for the quads, and then a nice gentle massage for the IT band. For this class, you'll want to have 2 myofascial balls. You might find a block. You'll want 1 block, but I always like to have 2 just in case. You don't necessarily need a blanket, but I would recommend having it on hand just so that you can pad up the balls if it's feeling a little bit too tender. And then you'll either want to have either a soft, squishy ball like the Rad Center or the Yoga Tune-Up Gorgeous ball. If you don't have either of those, that's no problem. You can use a foam roller or simply roll up that blanket into a nice, firm, thick roll, and you can use that as well. So what you need are 2 balls, a block, and a blanket, and then bonus if you have a soft squishy ball or a foam roller. And we'll get started here by taking the 2 yoga balls with you and come to lay on your back. And as you lay on your back here, just take a moment to send your legs long. You might turn the toes in and out a couple times just to let the legs relax. And then allow the toes just to flop out into a comfortable position. And give yourself just a couple breaths here to feel the 2 sides of the pelvis, the right and the left leg. And just notice how you're feeling through these parts of the body. And take another breath there. And then go ahead and bend your knees, putting the feet flat on the floor. You'll take your 2 balls and you could tie them up into a sock if you wanted to, or if you have a type of ball that comes in a tote, you can put them in their tote. You can also just stack them next to each other. We're going to roll onto that left side and push yourself up onto your forearm there to start. Take the 2 balls just behind this thigh bone, so where the thigh bone plugs into the hip socket. You'll set the 2 balls just above and a little bit behind that space on the outside of your glute muscle. So if you can see there, we've got the balls underneath the outer hip essentially. And then in slow motion, and you can do this on your forearm, or I like to lower myself back to the floor so that I can be a little bit more lazy about it. In slow motion, you're going to press your right foot into the floor and start to move your pelvis to the left so that the balls move the tissues of the glute closer to the sacrum. You might have to shift your body a little bit as you roll there, so kind of walking the left shoulder over to the left as the balls move more towards the midline, and you're going nice and slow here. If you encounter any areas that are really resistant to the sensation, pause on that spot and then imagine like you're trying to press your left knee down into the floor. That's going to cause the glutes to contract. And then relax that effort, and you might be able to sink in a little bit deeper. And then once you find that ability to relax and sink in, continue along that journey of smushing the balls and your tissues over towards the sacrum until you kind of butt up towards the edge of the sacrum. And then we're just going to reset. So you might put that left foot on the floor to reach underneath you, scoop the balls out, move the hips a little bit to the right, place the balls on the outside of the glute there, and then start that process over. You might find a slightly different spot a little bit above or below the first location. And again, I just found a spot where it's a little bit resistant. It kind of pushes me out of the tissue. So what I'm going to do is find that contract, pressing my left knee down towards the floor. Feel your butt engage. And then relax, and you might find that allows the tissues to soften and you can sink in a little bit more easily. And just slowly moving across that cheek and adjusting your body position just to kind of follow that line. If you come up against any of those resistant areas, contract the glutes, hold for a moment, relax, and then continue on your way. And we'll do this little smush of the glutes from the outer hip towards the sacrum one more time. So again, bend that left knee, pick the balls up from underneath, and reset. Maybe you go in a slightly different spot there. And I've got the balls about at a 45-degree angle. So they're kind of working from that outer hip towards the sacrum, towards the back of the pelvis. This is a great one. This is one of my favorite techniques. It's a good one both before and after athletic endeavors, whether that's running or lifting or another sport. It's also a really, really nice refresher after long periods at the desk. And as you start to finish up there, let those balls come towards the sacrum. When you get right about to the sacrum, plant the left foot down, lift the hips up, and just slide the balls out from underneath. And go ahead and extend those legs once more. Give the legs a little shake and then let them relax. And just notice the two sides of the body there. Does one glute feel a little bit heavier and more relaxed, maybe softer on the floor? Does one glute feel like it's carrying a higher level of tone? And we're going to stay on this left leg here. So press yourself up to a seat and grab your yoga block. You'll just need one ball for this, so you can set the second one to the side. And we're going to work through the hamstrings here. Bring that yoga block up towards the back of the thigh and place the ball on top. Now you're going to get that ball as high as you can, but keep both sides of the sit bones grounded. And then extend your right leg out long, and the left leg will go towards straight-ish. Now from here, you might simply rock your knee in and out, or you might lift your leg up and find a little bit more of a sweeping sensation. I prefer to pick my leg up. I feel like it gives me a little bit more ability to move my leg. But if that feels like a lot of effort, especially in the front of the hips, feel free to let the foot stay grounded and find more of that rock. And giving this little bit of cross fiber action to stimulate some hydration, to wake up the tissues and circulation. And then let the foot come down, and you're just going to move that block a little bit down so that you're about in the middle of the hamstring, and then repeat that same thing here, either keeping the foot grounded and finding a little bit of a rock, like you're internally and externally rotating the thigh, or you can lift the foot and then find that similar movement, but now you've just got a little bit more freedom in the leg. And give it just another moment or two here and see if you can find this sense of ease and softness. So if you are someone who has maybe really tight hamstrings and this is feeling really tender for you, you could always throw a blanket on top. Keeping the foot grounded is going to be less weight, so it'll be a little bit less intense. And then let that foot rest and slide the ball down one more time. And we're not going to go right behind the knee itself. Stay a few inches above that, but you're in the lower portion of the hamstring there. And one more time, your choice, rocking the foot with the heel grounded or finding this little sweep of the heel above the floor. And maybe noticing how the different parts of the hamstring might have a slightly different texture as the ball rocks across them. Feeling a sense of ease in the breath and the body. And just give it maybe one more rock side to side. And then release. Set that block just to your side there. We'll use it in a moment, but take a moment just to shake the legs again. Close your eyes if you like, and just take a breath to notice left hamstrings versus right. We're going to continue on this left side. We're going to do the whole sequence on the left side and then follow it up on the right. So come onto your right side hip, and you could obviously just lay down, but I want to stay facing the camera. And then grab your block once more. We're going to go for those inner thighs, specifically kind of close to the knee. I like to come down and rest my head on my hand. You can let your head rest in your arm if you prefer. Place your block out in front of you, and you can play with the lowest height, or the middle height there. And then let the ball come down. And again, you're not right on that inner knee, but maybe 2 inches above it on the inner thigh, kind of right where the seam of your pants might run up. And you'll place the knee on the block, the knee on top of the ball on top of the block. Now this might be enough right here, just holding a little bit of pressure. You might let your body kind of rock a little bit forward and back, rolling the ball in the same direction as the tissue fibers. Or you might butt up against one spot that feels a little bit tender but not painful. It's not so intense that you're gritting your teeth or you're furrowing your brows. You can still breathe. It's just a little tender. And then maybe you lift your foot up off the floor and then lower it back down. You can stick with any of those 3 options I laid out. Rolling in the direction of the fiber, staying still, or adding this movement of the foot. And we'll just take another breath. If you were moving, let the foot rest, let the body rest, pause, take a moment. And we'll just travel up that inner thigh, which might mean rolling your body more towards the floor. It might be moving the block up towards your hip. And you might have to play with the block as you move up, the height of the block as you move up the leg. Now you can take any of those options, same as before. Stillness, little rock, and in fact, I'm going to switch that block position. Or once you find a tender spot, you can add that lift and lower of the foot. You might not lift your foot as high as you kind of creep a little bit closer up towards the hip, and that's okay. Whether you're moving or not, just pause for a moment in your stillness. And then one more time here, scooch that ball up a little bit higher towards the inner hip crease. Maybe you change the angle of your block so that the leg can comfortably kind of hang there. And again, rolling a little bit, you might find that perhaps it's a little too tender to add in that rolling. I'm just going to stay still and give yourself 2 breaths here. Good. Release the ball. Move the block out of your way, and you can choose to roll onto your back or come to your belly, but just take a moment in a comfortable position where you can just take a second to notice how the tissues feel. Set your ball to the side, and whether you're on your back or your belly, just make your way back up to a seat and bring the legs out in front of you. And we're just going to mark a spot here that we'll visit in a little bit, but we're not going to go right there, so you'll just have to mark it in your memory. So take your legs out long in front of you, take your 2 peace sign fingers to your front hip points, and then drop just below them kind of into the hip crease and slide about half an inch or an inch wider. And then let your fingers just kind of press down into that tissue there and rock the toes in and out. And as you rock the toes in and out, feel for a little muscle that's going to kind of push up into your fingers. And if you're not finding it, move the fingers around until you do. And that's your muscle, that's your TFL, your tensor fascia latae, which is, as you might presume, really related to this band, this group of tensor, of fascia latae. That's what they call this area of connective tissue around the thigh, and that's where the IT band actually originates from. That's where it begins, that thickening that goes down to the knee. So we won't go there right away. We're going to come back to it, but just mark that in your memory so it's a little easier to access when you get there. Now you can either use your foam roller or your soft squishy ball. And we're going to come onto that left side once more. Foam roller or your squishy ball goes to the outside of that left knee. And then I like to come down and rest my head in my hands again. From here, lift the 2 legs up, and then it's kind of like you're swimming. You're going to kick 1 foot forward, the other foot back, and then switch. And then keep going there, just kind of swimming the legs back and forth. And whether you're on your ball, the foam roller, or if you didn't have either of those and you rolled up a blanket or a towel, you might feel that this top leg isn't really getting any type of work, right? It's just providing weight onto the left leg so that as you bend and straighten the knee, it creates this kind of shearing effect, this movement of the different layers of tissue past each other to help stimulate some hydration and circulation into this area that tends to get kind of frictiony. Then we call it like a high friction zone where there's a lot of parts moving past each other. And it tends to get a little bit lacking in that circulation, which is where we have the adhesions or the cross links form. So this is a great, gentle way to encourage some fluid and hydration and some movement between the different layers of tissue. All right, last one there. And then just let the feet rest. Move off the ball. You can reach down and grab it. And we're going to come to get that TFL, that tensor fascia latte. So pop yourself onto your forearm here. Put your right foot on the floor, left leg long, and then lift the hips up. And you're going to aim the ball for about that area you felt with your fingers. Now, I really like, and then I like to take my right leg and cross it on top so that now you're taking about a 45-degree angle to the floor. I'm going to turn around so that you can see the placement of the ball. And you can do this with your squishy ball or with your regular, smaller ball, whether that's a tennis or a myofascial ball. And you're just going to move yourself around until you find a little bit of tenderness. Now, for me, this area in my body tends to be a tender spot, which is why I like the bigger surface. But if you're having a hard time finding it, then a smaller ball will give you definitely a more pinpointed surface. It'll be a little bit more pronounced. It's a nice way to say it. And then once you find that tender spot, you can choose to just be still and take a couple breaths. Or you can bend the left knee and let the foot kind of flop towards the floor and then a little bit more towards the midline. So you're internally and externally rotating your thigh. And you might feel that create a little bit more interesting sensation. And just give yourself another moment here. And if you're moving that leg, let the foot come back to the floor, pause, and everyone take a breath. Now again, you might choose to roll onto your back or to a seat. I just like to come to my belly from here because I'm already most of the way there. Take a moment, move the ball out from underneath you. You can even just take it right out of the way there and give the legs a little shake. From here, last one on this left side. Press yourself back up. Grab your 2 myofascial balls. And you're going to start in this kind of kneeling position and place the balls out in front of you, one next to the other. These balls are going to go just above your knee, so not on the knee itself, but just above the knee on the quad. And that right leg is going to step forward kind of like a pigeon, but the shin is on the floor. So if you can see that, I've got my shin on the floor. It's out to the side. And then I'm placing the very bottom of my quads onto the balls. Now, if you're lucky enough that you have a bolster right there, you're more than welcome to slide it underneath your body. It's something to rest onto. Or you can simply take your forearms to the floor. Widen that right knee as you need to, and then take just a little shift of your body forward and back. So you feel those balls moving up and down about an inch or two. If you come across any interesting areas, you might just pause and breathe. And you can either use your hands to move the balls up or scoot yourself back in space. Either way, the balls will move up about halfway up the thigh, and if they start to separate, just reach down, draw them back together. And you might stay still again, or you might shift your body forward and back. This tends to be a pretty tender area, so we're not going to stay for too long. See if you can keep your jaw soft and the breath steady. And if you need to, again, throw that layer of blanket on top and give yourself some extra padding. Pause on a spot that feels helpful. Take a breath. Move the balls with your hands or scoot your body back, but slide them up another couple inches. And then once more, rock yourself up and down. Now, as you move up the thigh here, you might notice that different areas of the thigh feel more or less tender. For me, this is definitely my tender spot. So if you butt up against any areas that are really intense, you can try engaging the quads again and then relaxing. You might find that the rolling is a little bit more intense than just staying still. And one last time, scooting your way back or using the hands to move the balls, creep yourself up to that top portion of the quad. And here, I generally stay still, but you're more than welcome to find a little shifting forward and back. Take a last breath. And then if you had your bolster underneath you, slide it out from under. Take the hands to the floor and press yourself back up. Take the balls with you as you just come to lay on the back once more. When you do land on your back, give the legs a little shake, turn the toes in and out, and then let them soften and relax. And give yourself just a breath or two to really take in the difference between the two legs. Maybe that's the way that the toes turn out. Maybe that's the way that the pelvis lands on the floor from left to right. Or perhaps you feel that sense of hydration, of circulation moving through the left leg. Even like a vibrational buzz through the tissues in the body. And now we're going to start again on that right side. So I'm just going to turn around again so that you can kind of see the balls this time around. So we're going to place those balls next, kind of right behind the femur, where the femur plugs into the hip socket. And at a slightly 45-degree angle. So roll over to your right side. You might pop yourself onto your forearm. And then place the balls there. They're underneath the outer hip. They're not on the bone. They're just next to it. Try not to lose them like me. And then you might stay on your forearm. I personally like to come down onto my whole side body there. Slowly start to shift your pelvis, this time to the right. So your body's moving to the right. Maybe you push off that left foot a little bit to find that movement. And the balls are slowly kind of smushing the tissues back from your outer hip towards your sacrum. And along the way, if you find that it's hard to relax, go back to that contract and relax technique, imagining like you're pressing your right knee down towards the floor. That'll engage the glutes, and then let it relax and soften. You might notice that perhaps you drop in a little bit deeper. And then continue to follow that trajectory, moving towards the back of the pelvis, adding in contract and relax as you need it. And when you get those balls right up against the very edge of the sacrum, we don't need to roll over it for today. You'll just reset. So kind of lifting the hips up. The balls come back to the outer hip. You might move them up or down a little bit. Land the body on top. And then smush yourself towards the center. Now, what happens, the reason why I like this one for post long periods at your desk is what happens with sitting at the desk for a long time is that we're sitting on our butt and our tissues are kind of creating this more widened shape. And I don't, typically like to label shapes of bodies, but that kind of saddlebag shape is because those tissues are coming out to the side. And your body's really intelligent. So if you're spending long periods of time at your desk like that, the body assumes that you want to be in that position more. So it makes it easier for you. And it starts to kind of lay down fibers in that more lengthened position that takes your butt more out to the side. So we want to kind of re-educate the tissues to say like, hey, let's move more onto the back of our body where we're supposed to be. And so this kind of smushing towards the sacrum is literally trying to do that. Trying to tell your body, like, let's send these tissues back where they belong. Put our butt on our backside. One last time there. So if you didn't reset when you meet that area of the sacrum, just reset for that third round. And there's no magic number here. You could do this once if you only had a few minutes, 2 minutes. You wanted to do one on each side, one round. Or if it's feeling really good for you, you could move in ultra slow motion. Or maybe take 5 rounds. We don't want to spend a really long period of time working the same tissue though, so just be mindful of that. Generally, 30 seconds to 2 minutes is enough. Take those balls out from underneath you, pause for long enough to just take in the effects. And then bring yourself up to a seat, and you'll just need one of those balls. So you can set the other off to the side and grab your block. Send the right leg out in front of you and place the ball on the block and place the back of the leg on top, so the hamstring on top. And again, you're trying to get that ball as high up on the back of the leg as you can, but both sit bones stay grounded. Hands can come behind your back, and you'll just be kind of lazy here. Let your body weight lounge back in your hands. And then either rocking the leg side to side or picking the foot up and finding a little bit of a sweep, like the heel is just kind of skimming over the earth there. And you might play with externally and internally rotating the thigh, meaning that you're going to take that inseam of the pants towards the ceiling and then more towards the floor. I'm taking just a few moments here to rock across these tissues. And then move the ball down, going about halfway down the hamstring, and you'll find that exact same thing, rocking across. Noticing if maybe one leg is different than the other, especially if you're an athlete or an active person doing this. And then one more time, we'll move it down. It's very common that we have one leg that's different. And even maybe you have an injury and you kind of know that there's going to be some asymmetries. And as you get further down the hamstring, again, we're not going directly behind the knee, but just a couple inches above that. But if you're someone who maybe has an injury and you know that there's asymmetries, sometimes it's really interesting to see how they present in this myofascial work. It's not always what you think's going to happen. Good. Now slow down, remove the ball. Keep them both handy, ball and block, and just take a moment to shake the legs and notice how that feels. And take a breath. And we'll move to the inner thigh. So come onto your left side body. Again, I'm going to turn around just so I can continue to face you. Now you can start with that ball middle or block, middle or low height. Left leg will be long, and that right leg is going to come on top. I'm going to come down to my elbow because I find that more comfortable, but choose a position that works for you. And we're placing that ball just an inch or two above the knee there. So on the inseam of the thigh, but above the knee. And you might choose to let your body shift a little bit forward and back, kind of rolling that inseam a couple inches. Or maybe you find one spot that feels helpful. Again, tender, dull ache, but not painful. And you can lift and lower the foot there. Take just another moment there. If you're moving, let the foot relax. Find a breath. And then we'll take the ball about halfway up the leg. I like to bring my block a little bit higher when I go up to that second spot, but feel free to make that work for you and your body. You might notice that higher or lower gives more or less pressure. I find that I need a little bit more height to feel the work as I sneak up the thigh. And again, you might rock a little bit forward and back. You might stay still. Or you might choose to lift and lower. I like to just keep it more grounded at this point. And taking just another couple breaths here, moving through. Take one last breath. If you're moving, be still. Find that breath. And then move that ball just up towards that inner corner. But there's about an inch or two before you get into the groin there. And then again, let the leg rest. Feel free to find a little bit of movement or be still. We'll take about 3 steady breaths on this top corner. See if you can let the leg feel heavy over the block. Now lift the leg up, move the ball out from underneath. You might choose to lay on your belly or your back just for a moment to pause before we go into the next spot. Take another breath there. And then press yourself back to your seat. And you'll grab either your foam roller or your squishy ball and come onto your right side. Bring the forearm to the floor to start. Send your right leg long and then place your squishy ball about an inch or two above the outer right knee. So again, not right on the knee, but just above. And then lower yourself down to the elbow. Head rests heavy in the hands, and the 2 knees stack here. Pick the feet up off the floor and start to find that little kicking action. Swimming one leg forward and then switching. And just letting the weight of the top leg create that sense of kind of pressure down into the ball, or your foam roller or your rolled up blanket. You could also do this with your myofascial balls if you don't have any of those other items, and just stack the two balls one on top of the other so that you have a little bit more surface area to work with. Here we're just trying to create a nice broad sense of hydration in this area where it thickens closer to the knee. So that kind of really high friction zone. Take one last little round of kicking those legs. And then pause, take a breath. And we're going to move into that TFL here. So you'll reach down, take that ball out from underneath, and then come to draw that left leg forward. So you'll kind of start in this tabletop position, step that left knee forward, send the right leg back, and then the squishy ball or your myofascial ball is going to come underneath that spot where we felt the muscle push into our hands when we tipped our toes in and out. And then roll around a little bit until you find that kind of sweet, tender spot. Again, if you're using the squishy ball, it's going to be more mild. If you're using the single myofascial ball, it'll be more pointed, maybe a little bit more intense. Now you might stay here, or you might bend the right knee and kind of let the leg flop in and out a little bit there. Take just another breath or two. Release the leg. Give yourself a moment to take a breath. And then walk those hands underneath you. Press yourself back up. And one last little bit here for this right leg. We're going to grab the two myofascial balls once more. From this kneeling position, place the balls in front of your right knee. And then hands into table and step that left leg forward again. Let the right knee come down, or rather the right thigh come down onto the balls. You're not on the knee. And then bring the forearms to the floor, or again, you're more than welcome to slide that bolster underneath you. Now you might take a little rock up and down here, or you might just choose to be still. One leg might be more tender, more intense than the other. For me, my right leg is more intense, so I'm just going to stay nice and still. It's a little bit easier for me that way. And find a round or two of breath. Again, these quads are this really thick, powerful, strong muscle. So they can be a little bit intense to work through sometimes. But there's a lot of value in working through them, bringing that pliability, that hydration, enhancing range of motion. Scoot your body back or move the balls up. And again, perhaps you take a little rock, shifting the body forward and back. And if the balls start to splay, just reach down and tuck them back together. Noticing the different parts of your thigh that feel more or less intense, whether that's closer to the knee being really intense or right in the belly of the muscle. If you're moving, just pause, find a breath. Scoot your body back or the balls up. The result is the same. You can use your hands or move your body. And again, you might choose to find a little bit of movement up and down, or you might choose to be still. Take just another round of breath there. And then come back to your hands. Push yourself up and off of those balls. Move them to your side, out of the way, and come to lay onto your back one last time. Give the legs a little shake. Land yourself on the floor. Take an inhale here. Exhale. And as you feel your body get heavy, just notice the difference between the two sides, left to right. Hopefully, those differences are a bit more subtle now. And maybe notice if the two sides of the pelvis feel like they land evenly on the floor, more evenly. If there's that similar sensation of circulation, vibration, side to side. And just notice any other qualities or textures that you find there. And if you want to hang out here on your back, soaking in the effects of your practice, your myofascial release, feel free. If you're ready to come out, maybe you're moving into a movement practice or finishing up a movement practice with this, and you're ready to go into it or into the rest of your day, come onto your seat. And I thank you for joining me. I hope you found this helpful.